What's up, guys? My name's Hugh Miller, and I am beyond thrilled to once again be joined by the wonderful Robert Riedl on this lovely YouTube channel right here. For today's show, we are going back 25 years to the origin of the Nancy Drew PC Adventure series by Her Interactive, which is actually amazing that it's been 25 years. There's been well over 30 games, and 34th is on the way. It's pretty incredible. But very few people worked on the very first Nancy Drew game, and I'm incredibly honored to have one of those people here with us today. So, Robert, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks, Hugh. Thanks, fans. Yeah, I never would have thought if you asked me in 1998, like, you think you'd be talking about this game in 25 years, I'd say no.
Yeah.
But before we start, I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
So that is happy
Oh!
birthday. Seekers and Kill, happy 25th. We don't really know your birth date. We don't have like a birth certificate or anything, but for me, it'll always be August when we went to Gold Mask.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, happy birthday, Secrets Can Kill. I should have brought some cake. I wasn't even thinking. I got cookies downstairs. I could run downstairs and grab a cookie, but that's the best I could do. Oh,
Yeah,
that.
I was just like, I was doing a grocery list yesterday, and I was sort of like, I should probably get a cake. I didn't bake it because I didn't know you were coming, but
Oh, well, I appreciate the
Mom.
thought anyways, yeah. Oh, that is so funny. Well, excellent, yeah.
And I don't remember a release party. I may have been like deprived or something like that, but I don't remember like any celebration for releasing this. I think we were just like really overwhelmed.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So I guess this is like my celebration.
Let's
This is my
go.
release party cake.
25 years later. It's never too
Good
late
thing
to
it's
have a
another
release party.
25-year-old birthday cake.
Yeah. Oh, if it was 25 years old, that piece of cake right there, I'd be a little bit worried. I would love to know where you
Yeah,
found it if it was 25 years old.
but I'm sure it you could probably make a good fortune in eBay selling
You
it.
probably could.
Well,
Oh, I'm sure you could.
25-year-old release party cake.
Oh man, yeah, that would be incredible. Well, it is interesting that you mentioned not remembering a release party and being overwhelmed because or possibly being overwhelmed because that was for those that don't know, Secrets Can Kill was being developed in a very different manner. So Her Interactive had a whole slew of things going on between like 1995 and 1998, whether it was company layoffs or company relocation, whatever. And this game was being made kind of in the midst of that. And Robert, if you would want to talk about kind of how you got brought on board with the game itself, or even just your history with American Laser Games leading up to that, then that'll give us a great starting point.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I started with American Laser Games, which then spun off into Her Interactive in 1995. I had just moved down to Albuquerque, and I ended up getting a job with American Laser Games as a cost accountant. So I was at that time they were making arcade games. So they were building out like the cases and the little guns that American Laser Games used for their shoot 'em ups. So I was mainly working in the front offices with like the manufacturing and shipping operations. um, and so I was doing that. And then in 1995 is also when Her Interactive really started with Patricia Flanagan's Mackenzie and Company, the 5 or 6 disc sort of clueless type of game where you had to juggle dating and homework and
The high
work.
school life, yeah.
Yeah, the high school life. So let's see. So in 1997, so what was happening at that time was that American Laser Games was kind of in this weird inflection point where they had this hit series starting in 1990 with Mad Dog 3, with the arcade business, but then they started getting a lot of competition from the like fighting games and more violent games, and the violence at the time with the shoot 'em ups was very pantomime, like someone would clutch their chest and fall over. There's a lot of stunt guy kind of work done, stunt guy and stunt girl.
Yeah.
And so they had an inflection point where they had to figure out like what's next. And so they put their money in a couple different bets. One was Quantum Quality Productions, which is like a strategy uh, type of computer game company that they acquired. And then Her Interactive was also another kind of bet that they invested in. Um, and neither of kind of where they neither of these investments kind of like panned out. And so there were layoffs in early 1997. The company actually went through bankruptcy, reorg Chapter 11, which as an accountant was kind of exciting to see because I had never experienced that. Um, and I think in 1996, so 1990 was at 96 was when Vampire Diaries came out, and then the license was acquired for Nancy Drew. Vampire Diaries was a Simon Schuster intellectual property IP, and so I think that helped us get into the Nancy Drew license because we were able to demonstrate, we meaning Her Interactive American Laser Games, was able to demonstrate the ability to take book property and make it into an interesting adventure computer game. So in 96, license had been acquired. And then 97, we went through Chapter 11. And at that time, we had brought on a CEO from Microsoft in the Seattle area. And he didn't want to move down to Albuquerque. So he established an office here in Bellevue, Washington. Um, and he started hiring people he knew at Microsoft. And Sherry Grainer Ray, who was leading the design and development of Seekers Can Kill, was in Albuquerque, and there were additional layoffs and people were leaving. So at the end of 1997, Sherry decided to leave the company, and I'm not sure who recommended me, but someone tapped me and said, "Hey, do you want to be program manager and kind of like put all these assets together that we have to make a game?" And I said, "Sure, that sounds great." So in, I believe, January 1998 is when I started as the program manager. And my role was to lead a group of what we call scene builders, people to process all of the assets, sound assets, animation assets, art assets, and put them all together using our scripting language to then create the actual gameplay that you see today in the game.
Well, fantastic. And so you were brought up from Albuquerque up to Washington to help, like,
Correct.
just like to fully relocate, or were you going back and forth?
No, so in 1998 and early 1998, I was still in the Albuquerque office, and Wayne Sykes, their developer, was also there, and he was instrumental to help us understand how to use the scripting
Mm.
language. And whenever we wanted new functionality, we'd say, "Wayne, could you build this?" And he'd say, "It's going to take months," and then a couple of days later, he'd give it to us. So there were still operations in Albuquerque at that time, but then when we finished in the summer, I think it was August of 1998, then I packed up the company van. We had a company van. I'm not sure why. I think because we were doing a lot of location shoots for the live action kind of stuff, so that's why we
Right.
had a
Okay.
company
Yeah.
van. And so I loaded it up with all, sensitive financial accounting company kind of records, and then drove up the Pacific Highway to Bellevue, where they had put me up in like extended stay hotels, so I had time to both work and finish, getting this gold master out, but also to give me time to like find a place, so I wasn't like on the street
Yeah.
looking for
Just like, yeah,
looking for a place to stay.
on a park bench with your laptop, just like trying to get stuff done. I don't know what it was like back then. I did not even exist as a human being. So, anyways, um, so you were brought on as or I guess, promoted to program manager. So, how big was the team that you were working with in Washington?
Yeah, so let's see. So in Albuquerque, I had four program manage or sorry, four scene builders.
Okay.
And essentially they we didn't know how long it was going to take. And so it was kind of like a contract thing, like sort of
Mm.
like here's the environments that you got to build out. And once you're done with it, then see you later.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was just a kind of limited thing for them to do. We also had a contract, and again, this is when I started, right? There were other
Right.
people that were on board doing other projects that I'm not sure what they were doing. But when I started, the team was these four scene builders, Wayne, and then we had a contract developer, Christy Gamron, who was building the new sound system for the Vampire Diaries engine. Um, and then up in Seattle, we had Laura Henyon, Glenn McLean, I think, who was a 3D artist, and
Okay.
then Tim kind of came in, and then Glenn left, and Tim became the 3D artist, and then Christy Ulmer, who was our 2D artist. And I think there was another 2D artist, contract guy, who ended up leaving. Um, and then that was it in terms of production. We also had a animation studio in Racine. I think Karen Johnson Productions was actually out of Racine,
Okay.
not Milwaukee. Yeah, I think she was out of Racine. I think she sent us Kringle, which most people don't know, but in southeastern Wisconsin is the only place where you can find Kringle. Um, uh, Except for like there is a bakery in Bel Air. But anyways, it's this wonderful Danish pastry
Okay.
that's like this kind of layered, flattened um, thing where there's like fruit filling and cream, and
Okay.
it's really good. So yeah, so there's Karen Johnson Productions that was doing all the character animations. And then Kevin Manthe did the sound, sorry, the music, but the music had already been made
Right.
when I started. So I didn't work with Kevin for that round. And then of course there was the voice actors too, that Lonnie had wrangled the year before in San Diego.
Excellent. Yeah, so you kind of touched on some of the work that had been done before you joined because you joined in January of '98. So there was the voice acting, there was the music, and there was how much of the art was done by the time you had been brought on as program manager.
Yeah, so there was a couple art assets that had been provided, and then Laura and her team were sending us via FedEx
Mm.
assets throughout that time. Um, at that, 1998, like uh, dial-up speeds and access to the internet was really limited, so we were unable to send game builds and assets through the
Right.
internet. So we had to rely on burning CDs and sending them FedEx between the Bellevue office and Albuquerque.
Right. Yeah. The Google Drive still had not been thought up yet all the way through,
No.
unfortunately.
So every day was like, waiting for the FedEx guy or gal to like show up, and
Yeah.
like it's like Christmas every day. Um, and then I'd have to send the game builds, so then everyone, like Megan, who is at the time executive producer, could
Mm.
could check them out, and Laura as well to see what we had done and get feedback.
Right. 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 So when Sherry Grainer Ray had left the company, was it a challenge for you and your team to kind of pick up where she left off, or was it a pretty easy transition?
No, it was hard. Like, I had talked with Sherry about, things like game design and play patterns for women, which is her big métier. Lots of stories about Origin, who created the Ultima series that she had worked for in Austin, Texas.
Right.
Um, and she went through the script, so the Convo script, because the Convo script was cryptic. It wasn't clear how each scene kind of interacted with each other, what was how the different questions that can appear, how that worked. So she did walk me through that, so I had an understanding of how to build a Convo script. But essentially, like all I had was just a critical walkthrough, which was
Mm.
about a page, and the Convo script, which we didn't have a soft copy of, so we had like this binder, this hard copy for. So not a lot to go on to kind of figure out how to build this thing. So, in a sense, my team were like sleuths or detectives trying to like, figure out like where are these assets,
Right.
where does this go, and things like that, and like hotspots, like how do we figure out like should it be the whole screen, should it be just like just the hallway, should it just be the center.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of guidance to just help us make decisions, but we had to. Another one was music. Like we just had all these music files, but there were no music directions. Like this should play in this environment. Sometimes
Right.
we could tell by the file name, like I think Diner, Maxine's, or something like that. But another one like was called Oriental. I'm like I don't know where this goes, and I think we ended up not actually putting that song in, even though I think it's in the CD. Um, and then, as I'm building this out, there's a lot of like logic, right, involved. Like you have to like be able to determine like if you've gotten this book, it shouldn't show up anymore.
Right.
And so I remember like there's these whiteboards in this tiny meeting room near Wayne's office, and I took like a day or two to like figure out, like map out, like draw out like a flow chart of like, okay, you do this and this and this and this, and then this is available, et cetera, et cetera. And it got so big, I was using post-it notes. And it was good because I was like, oh my gosh, we got like kind of this circular loop where you had to get A in order to get B, but you couldn't get B until you got A or something like that. And so then we ended up having to like figure out how to patch things, and there'd be like desperate calls to Wayne to give us more functionality, or the art team to like, can you build us that? Um, so it was, not only was it like learning how to just use these tools to make this game, but also like, how do we make gameplay on this for this story that's kind of incomplete.
Right. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So as you were developing, yeah, like this massive like logic map and all that stuff, so had you ever really worked in games before from like this side of things, or this was pretty new to you then?
No, yeah, it was completely new to me. So I had built like text-based games in high school, but they
Mm.
were really simple, and they were in basic, and very linear. Unlike this game, which was multilinear and had all these dependencies.
Yeah.
And then uh, but I was getting my MBA at that time, and the classes were helpful in terms of systems and analysis and design to look at this project as a software project that I was being trained in to manage. So I was able to use those skills to do kind of more of the administrative type of work, like planning, resource planning, scheduling, things like that.
Right. Yeah, so then going forward from this game, how much of that became more streamlined, how much of it became easier, and how much of the production projects that you were put in charge of, how much of that was kind of looked back in like a post-mortem sort of way and saying, all right, this was convoluted, this was a better way of doing things? Or do you have much recollection of how much got carried over into Stay Tuned for Danger?
Yeah, I think with Seekers and Kill, the postmortem was really good to figure out, just what worked, what didn't, systems or mechanisms that we can put in place to avoid these pain points. And one big thing that one of the biggest pain points of Seekers Can Kill was the two disc situation.
Right.
And I think when we talked about Stay Tuned for Danger, I talked about this story. Uh, but essentially the output was I worked with Wayne to figure out how can we get this onto one CD, um, and uh, and so I think like what Seekers Can Kill really did was it really inspired the team to kind of take it up to our A game.
Right.
Um, to make a better game, just not from a production point of view, but also from a design, narrative,
Yeah.
um, puzzle view. Not necessarily script, because I was up writing the script. I was just we were just sort of like, who's gonna write the script? And everyone kind of looked at me and I'm like, sure, I'll write it. Because I knew, how to like create these kind of logic situations with the buys and information checks. So yeah, the script is my sin.
Yeah.
Although I still like Stay Beautiful. Like I
Oh
just saw
yeah.
it, like when I wrote that, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so good.
It's a
Well,
very classic line, very much a fan, very much a fan favorite. It's stood the test of time. One thing I'm really, and I know a lot of fans really love about this series is the Easter eggs that have been introduced and carried on for, in this case, a few decades. And so when working on the first game, what kind of Easter eggs were you guys putting in? Like, did you guys just say, all right, we're gonna start something that's gonna be fun to carry on if we do another game or two, or are we just gonna put our name in there somewhere just as a little calling card, or how'd that look?
yeah. I've always been a huge fan of Easter eggs. It started when I got my Atari 2600 and was
Yeah.
playing this game called Adventure. And
Oh
and I
yes.
remember like in the lunchroom, like kids were talking about like, in the maze, there's like this like little pixel thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like you can go through this like barrier and see like this like whole new area. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that doesn't exist. I remember spending all that time in the maze, like trying to hear it. And there's like a little sound that plays. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get the little pixel. And I go, sure enough, you could go in the room and it says created by Warren Robinett.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's so cool. Well, then, when I grew up and became like, like a game designer, I'm like, I want to put in like Easter eggs as well. I think in Secret Stay Killed, I feel like you don't have traditional Easter eggs, right? These like really secret stuff that
Mm-hmm.
unless you knew, you would not be able, unless you got the arcane knowledge or stumbled upon it, like you wouldn't know it
Mm-hmm.
was there. So the phone numbers are kind of Easter eggy, right? But
Right.
it is promoted. Like we put all these phone numbers, so like we're gonna make phone calls, and then people putting in like their kids'
Right.
photos
Of
or
course. Yeah.
the creepy class photos from yeah, I just saw that the other day. I'm like, oh gosh, I just named myself. I think it was February or March or something.
Oh, that is too funny.
But then, as things grew, like I really wanted to like, have this kind of culture of Easter eggs. And so I think that one of the first Easter eggs that I put in were the phone numbers, right?
Right.
That
Right.
again, you didn't you they were not in the game at all. But like I think Go Cats, was one
Right.
where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you dialed that you heard like cats meowing or something
Yeah.
like that, and then I think for Ghost Dogs there was the ability to go into like additional maze areas if you were carrying something or
Exactly.
something like
Yeah. There
that.
was. Yeah. You could access
Um,
more of the forest. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that was really like that was a Warren Robinett inspired thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have this like thing, you get to go through the secret areas.
I love
And
that.
here's a fun story. So there's this Parents' Choice, yeah,
Yeah.
Parents' Choice that we'd always get awards for. I had this wonderful conference in Lambertville, New Jersey, every like winter, and so people who made like children's games would go there, including me and members of the team. And so every night we would like the first night of the conference we would assemble in this room in this really nice hotel, and the guy who ran it, whose name is escaping me, sorry, would introduce everyone who was there because it was a pretty small group. It was like 25, 30 people. And so he said, and he introduced the next person. He said, "This is uh, Warren Warren Robinett, who's made a lot of games." And I like I'm a huge fanboy of
That's
his. I
so
never like
exciting.
met him. I was like, like Warren Robinett, you're kidding. Like I'm like, you're the like Atari game
Yeah.
guy. And he looked at, the leader and he's like, who's this guy? And the leader's like, don't worry, he's like that. It's fine. But it was like I was so chuffed to be like, you inspired me to like,
Yeah.
look for and then actually plant like
Oh, that's
Easter
so
eggs
cool.
through all these games that I made. Like, can I buy you a drink? And sure.
That's
Um, uh,
fantastic.
yeah. So
Wow.
Easter eggs like were really important, and it was fun to kind of add that kind of meta layer and that kind of arcane knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you know you're in the know, so you're and you get some sort of like payoff and reward for being in the know. So that's kind of the etiology or the origins of of Easter eggs in the Nancy Drew
That's so great.
games.
Yeah, well, I know for me,
Wait, I forgot his name. Sorry.
no, you're good.
It was Warren Buckleitner was the Parents' Choice guy, and then Wayne Robinette.
There we go. That's all good. That's all good. Well, I love that because of these games, I absolutely love putting Easter eggs into anything I do, and usually it's just something as simple as like taking my name and putting it into like the number keypad, so associating a letter with a number, just very simple stuff like that. But if I get the chance
Yeah.
to put my name into anything like that, it's just I love it. I love that, so in a way,
Although there is one Easter egg that I think no one has found yet.
in Secrets
Um,
Can Kill, or just in the games in general.
um, yeah, in the games in general.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you right now,
I
the
don't know.
this
Yeah.
this this uh this community of Nancy Drew fans is pretty incredible. I've seen them find some pretty amazing things in a very short amount of time. So I'm sure that they'll be wanting to know anything else. But you were there for the first 26 games, was it? 27 games?
Let's see. So, the last full game was the, I think, Egyptian one,
So
and then the one with Tesla I started working on before I left the company.
so the Tesla one was the Deadly Device, which was game
Yeah,
number 27.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
mm,
So yeah, I think I was in like 2 months of production for that one.
okay. So that gives you 26 games, Nancy Drew fans, to go and explore.
Well,
So
well, but also there's also the Game Boy and the DVD one.
okay, just to add that in, yeah, that, and then I guess there's the dossier games as well, Resorting to Danger and Lights, Camera, Curses, and just to add a few more into
I
the
mean,
mix.
someone may have found it, but I just yeah, I don't know if they have.
Wow, I guess we'll have to go and find out. That's fantastic. That is great to hide an Easter egg that must be just so deep in the game or whatever. Maybe it's so surface that no one caught on, but couldn't tell you. That's excellent. I actually, on the subject of looking through games and spending a lot of time doing that, one of the things that was introduced, I assume around the time, I think it was with Secrets Can Kill, was the 20 plus hours of gameplay for the game. So Secrets Can Kill is kind of known to be a very short game. So how did that come about for that game?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know where that number came from.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember, one day Jan was like, "So we have 20 hours of gameplay," and it's like, "What?" Like I think it's more like 20 minutes now, and he was
Yeah.
just like, his eyes bugged out, and I was like, "Well, that's like I'm like that's the critical path." So maybe if you looked at everything and
Mm-hmm.
played all levels, maybe it would be 20 hours. And so yeah, there's just this kind of like mad scramble, like how do we justify that? And I think we ended up justifying it of like, if you took the time to look at all the messages on the bulletin boards and tried to decode them and et cetera, it came out to
Yeah.
maybe 3 hours. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, thank goodness for and I think it was Laura Henyon, the art director at the time, who put in all of those like
Mm.
secret messages. Um, um, and thank goodness because then that added to the overall kind of gameplay. But when you look at Critical Path, like like it was very very short.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think we may have put like guardrails that like if you didn't see like Aunt Eloise's like password or something, then you couldn't. I think we didn't honor if you had like put it in.
Mm.
I think it aired out or something like that. Just to put a guardrail to make sure like if you didn't. see the password, you really shouldn't be able to like just enter it in.
Yeah, well, from my
Like a cheat.
understanding, I actually think you don't have to look at the code. I think you can just go up to the
Oh,
safe and
okay.
put it in. But yeah, but it is a I don't know if that's the same case for like the higher up levels. Like if you're on Master Sleuth, if that changes at all. But yeah,
Yeah, so I remember we had discussions about that, and I think I was the one who was like, yeah, we shouldn't allow that. Um, and I think I put like some sort of mechanisms, like saying like cheat or something like that. I don't know, but maybe Laura Henyon and other team members were like, we shouldn't do that. That's not fun.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. 20, because I know that the I don't want to say slogan, but on the back of the boxes it said 20 hours of gameplay for several games, going I think up to like Curse of Blackmore Manor or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but I under
Yeah.
like to me it makes more sense for like the later games because they got a lot bigger and more challenging, and players would spend more time in them. But at the same time, 20 hours is a lot of time to spend on a game.
Yeah.
Like games nowadays, like the really big AAA games like Elden Ring or Jedi Survivor, like those ones can take 20 hours for like
Oh,
easily.
at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least, yeah, yeah. I guess if you like spend a lot of time wandering around the halls
Yeah.
trying to figure out what to do next, it can
Admiring all the
burn
art
into
and yeah.
20 hours. Yeah, just thinking like, what am I doing? What's my next step? I don't know.
Oh, actually, I do have a question I just thought of now. Going back to the Easter egg subject. So, in the hallways of the school and in Lillian's office in Staging for Danger, there you can find the artwork for like and the library as well. The artwork for Mackenzie and Company and the Vampire Diaries with the titles of Mackenzie and Company and the Vampire Diaries written on them. So that those I think those only showed up in those two games, but then like way down the line, I think in I want to say in Warnings That Waver the Academy, Her Interactive kind of brought back the Vampire Diaries, but because of I assume licensing, they changed it to the Campfire Diaries or Campfire Stories or something. Um, do you know if there was a reason why you guys stopped using those like that artwork as an Easter egg, or if it was just like it just seemed too irrelevant to reference those games?
Yeah, so a lot of those kind of visual Easter eggs were put in by the art team.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a product of like meetings or designs. Like, yeah, we should put a reference there. So these shout outs were directed by the art team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one thing that I did with the Secrets and Kill remastered was to play with Detective Beach. Because
Yeah.
because I remember at the end we're like Detective Beach. I'm like, what is this? And
Yeah.
at the end it says like it's in Paseo del Mar Studios.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, we didn't want to stay in like Florida
Yeah.
again. Let's go to New York. Like the soaps are made.
Right, of
So it
course.
kind of became like a kind of like an in-house joke about Detective Beach, like, and I think there's a reference later on where someone says like, "Oh, do you watch Detective Beach?" and someone says like, "Oh, no one watches that," or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was I don't know if it's in the game or not, or something that we like dreamt up of doing,
Well, that
but yeah, we
sounds
just didn't
familiar.
really
Yeah.
like Detective Beach. And one of the reasons is like we didn't have any like design docs about this.
Right.
So we're like, what do we do here? And we're like, we own the design. Let's make it, Light of Our Love or something like that. I forget
Yeah, Light of Our
the
Love. Yeah.
yeah, Light of Our Love. In which seemed more like a soap opera, right?
Yeah.
It seemed more of like a soap opera title. Detective Beach didn't really seem like a soap opera.
Yeah, that's more of
Um,
like a. Oh, I'm trying to think of like Baywatch kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm thinking of.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like CSI, which would have been kind of cool, but CSI didn't exist at that time.
Yeah.
I guess I forget what the question is, but
Oh no, it's all
but yeah,
good.
the whole
Yeah.
Detective Beach was just
It was more
oh
from the art
oh the
team.
shout outs, the visual shout outs, yeah.
Yeah.
It was from the art team, and so I think it was just decided like not to put that in there. I don't know why the name change for Vampire Diaries. Probably because it is a trademark name. So um, uh, and then it's kind of kind of a shout out, but it's also kind of making fun as well.
Right.
Like,
Of course, yeah. Well, I know that that was something that Her Interactive would do in multiple games. They would take like a real life name or brand or icon, I guess, and actually rehash it a little bit. And there's a TV in the Haunted Carousel, instead of Sony, it says Phony. Or there's a poster in the final scene which was based off of The Emperor's New Groove, and it was a little, I think it was a little rehash of that, or Easter egg nod to that. But yeah, just
yeah.
fun little things like that, which are always good.
Yeah, and one thing that I had to do, starting when I was a program manager, is to make sure that is to make sure that we were legally compliant in terms
Mm,
of our content and any kind of notice that we needed to provide in the credits, and
right.
make sure we had agreements with the people who built the content for the games. And so, I remember like just a constant struggle with the artists of just like we can't put this in. This is copyrighted. This is trademarked. I need to
Yeah.
know where this is from. We just can't take stuff from the internet.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of tension there. And so I'm glad that the artists embodied that and made these kind of parody names
Mm-hmm.
instead of the actual names themselves. But these shout outs were popular. Like I remember in Final Scene, John Hayashi put a Her Interactive mug in there, and
Right.
the girls were
Yeah.
really excited to see that. So, so these shout outs were awesome. I loved them. But then it could go to an extreme of sort of like, and I think I've mentioned this, but just one struggle I had with art is like they'd create all this like really cool stuff that we
Yeah.
hadn't talked about, and I'm like, oh, why didn't you tell me you're gonna build this?
So we
Because
can
we
do
could have
something
like
really cool with
integrated
it.
into the yeah,
Yeah.
we can integrate it into the plot somehow. Like there's things that come to mind is like the animation of the rain god in Secret of the Scarlet Hand.
Yes.
Brian Thomas Thompson spent a long time, and I'm just like, this is really neat, but it's just eye candy.
Oh, it's like the
But art is fun
scariest
though.
animation too. Like that animation freaked me out as a kid. I know it freaked out a few other of my friends too, but it's a good one.
Yeah. So I don't see those as like Easter eggs, or kind of like more like shout outs. Easter eggs
Right.
for me are like that kind of like arcane knowledge that
Mm.
you gotta like find something or stumble upon something that unlocks something else or
Yeah, yeah.
lets you.
Well, that's a great differentiation there. Because for me, Easter eggs have always been been a much general thing of like if it's a reference to real life, if it's a reference to a past game, whatever. That to me just feels like a fun Easter egg to go and find, regardless. But yeah, that's interesting. And you were just saying something. I just had a thought too. I'm gonna try and remember it, but I'm probably gonna forget it, and it's gonna bug me. So I'll just move on.
It's strawberry shortcake. Is that
If I had a piece of that, I'm sure it would just come right back to me. That's all good though. Before you started at on the Nancy Drew Her Interactive team, were you a fan of Nancy Drew? Had you been familiar with the brand before that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Huge fan. So I had two older sisters,
Mm,
and so I got their hand-me-downs, including clothes. It was the 70s. Everything was unisex. But I got
right.
their hand-me-downs with their Nancy Drew books. And so yeah, I was very familiar with the series. Um, and then I remember when I was in college, one summer I was working for this. It was called George Williams College. It was a conference center on
Okay.
Lake Geneva in southern Wisconsin, and they would host like nonprofits or schools for outdoor education. So it was just like 300 acres of this conference, and
Wow.
I was the night front desk clerk, and
Okay.
um, and one thing that we started between like shifts was like this kind of round robin story where you like start a story and then the next person on the shift
Would
would continue it.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
um, and so like I think yeah, I think my boss like introduced Nancy Drew, and so I went with it. Like I
Yeah.
would rate like because it's nighttime, it's kind of boring. There's
Well,
not a
yeah.
lot really to do. So I started like writing pages of like this crazy Nancy Drew mystery with cicadas because it was at the time of a cicada eruption, when all the bugs were coming
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
It was like a weird story of Nancy Drew and and cicadas. And looking through, sorry, I watched like a playthrough of Seekers Can Kill the other day,
Mm.
and I noticed like in the security report, like someone mentioned like raccoons in the dumpsters, and I'm like, yeah, that was inspired by that time at
That
this
is so
conference. I was like,
funny.
I'd have to go out and make sure like doors were locked and stuff, and like there'd always be like raccoons just hanging out in the dumpsters.
Oh, that's too funny.
Um, so I wrote the report in like the style that I would have to write these reports as a night front desk clerk.
Yeah, that's excellent. So,
Oh,
oh,
and then also in the '70s, like as a kid, I watched the Nancy Drew series with
oh, yes,
Pamela
Pamela
Stewart.
Sue Martin.
Pamela Sue Martin, yeah,
Yeah,
Pamela Sue Martin and the Hardy Boys.
yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. I still remember the theme song. I still wanted to use the theme song as like our intro.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would have been great. That would have been funny. I'm sure somebody would create some sort of mod for the game just to have that pop up. But
And
uh,
CBS, but then it was CBS's
of course,
property.
all the copyright, you got to deal with that too, and yeah, licensing. So because you were a Nancy Drew fan, how did that affect your view of this game and even the games that came after? And what kind of changes did you try and implement to the series because of that?
Yeah, I found the first game was kind of weird, right? Because I grew up on the Yellowbacks, which
Right.
were always sort of like, like gothic mysteries, crumbling mansion, people running around in scary hoods. So it had kind of this like gothic or cult kind of feel, and Secrets to Kill is like a murder, which
Mm.
like I don't remember like that happening at all in Yellowbacks. Like it was
Right.
always
Yeah.
like, some old lady getting embezzled, or like the communists trying to like I don't know.
Yeah. Some
Um
kind of gang.
uh yeah, so it felt really weird. Like I'm like, this doesn't feel like Nancy Drew.
Mm.
And with Stay Tuned for Danger, we're kind of like already had to do that. I think that was an agreement that we were going to use um the case file that it
Right.
was
Yeah.
based on. But for the third one, all of us really wanted to do something spooky because all of us, felt like that's the Nancy Drew that we know,
Hmm.
and we think that the fans would like as well. Um, so having an understanding of having a background with Nancy, with the Nancy Drew Yellowbacks at least, really, I think helped me um, kind of create really push for that kind of like weird, creepy, kind of gothic feel. But one
Right.
thing we realized is like it can always be that. Like it can always be like, creepy amusement park kind of deal. We needed to also mix it up with other kind of things and more kind of like place adventure, right?
Mm.
Like let's look to Northwest, or let's go to Hawaii or something like that, which again was very appealing with our market,
Yeah.
with our user base. But for me, like I always wanted to do the like creepy, scary stuff. And with Curse of Blackmore Manor, like I was just sort of like I had just buzzing with ideas for that one. I remember Carolyn Goodwin, who is our marketing person, had like really reined me in.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't do that. That's too creepy, too creepy.
That is excellent. Oh, I
Not
love
my
that.
game. It's not
Yeah.
my game. It's someone else.
And it still turned out pretty well. I think we obviously talked about this, and for those that don't know, Robert and Kalina Herman both joined me for a lovely playthrough of Blackmore Manor last year. I think it was last year. And so there's a lot of great behind the scenes stories that get shared during that multi episode series, which is always good. So, but we are here to talk about the first game, and so I'm curious too, because we've talked a lot about kind of the development that you were there for and leading up to the Gold Master. Um, what kind of crunch did the team feel, if any, leading up to the Gold Master, and between then and the release? What did that kind of look like for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. So because I had a pretty big staff, it wasn't as crunchy as
Mm,
like other games where it was just either me or like Gabe Day, someone else.
right. Yeah.
Um, and I remember like our game builds would like take like hours to build, literally hours. And the more
Interesting.
assets that we had, the longer that it would take. So I remember for subsequent games, like just staying late into the wee hours in
Mm,
the Bellevue office, just building out that game. Um, and I think probably with the Gold Master that they were building, I had to stay in late too, where we had made assets, and then I had to put them together using the scripting language, and then I had to build it out to make it ready for the next round of testing the following day. Um, so it's for Secret Secure was kind of a blur.
Mm.
But one story that I remember was we sent the Goldmaster to so Goldmaster is like the final, right? It's just
Yeah,
like
that's the one
everything
that
is
gets
locked
copied.
down.
Yeah.
Right. This is the one that we're going to actually send out. And so we used a testing house uh, um, in Factoria, which is south of where our offices were.
Okay.
And it was this huge lab is configuration testing. So what they were doing is they were running the game on a whole bunch of different devices, sound cards, video cards,
Right.
operating system flavors, processing chips. And they found this bug where when the game would load and run for the first time, it would crash.
Mm.
And this was like we couldn't ship with this, like we
Right.
couldn't ship with the game saying like install it and run it and it crashes,
Yeah, of course.
especially our first game where people were not going to be patient with that. So I remember like spending like 2 or 3 days in that lab just going through all of the configurations where it would crash and how it would crash. And also what complicated is that all these configuration, all these like machines could have different operating system
Hmm.
versions or setups as well. But I ended up narrowing it down to like the original operating system before like updates. And
Okay.
and talking to Wayne, who was the developer, what it was that it was a video card issue. So we required
Mm.
16 bits of video, but we only really sent uh, 15 bits. So 3 bits for
Right.
green, 3 bits for blue, 3 bits for red. And the crash was happening because the operating system didn't know what to do with the extra bits. And so we were able to like define what the problem is. We were also able to define a fix, but we couldn't, we decided not to patch it until later. And we knew also the configurations where this would occur, and it was not, that large. So we determined to move forward with the game with this bug. And for technical support, it was easy. It was just sort of like try it again, and it
Yeah.
would 90% of the time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that was leading up. So that was leading up to the Gold Master and a little bit after. And when you guys finally got around, we've talked about this before, but the age old debate of when the game actually came out. I think we've kind of kind of realized that it was November. Was there? Do you know? And I'm saying this just because this morning I found out the game was available on one website on November 19th of 98. Do you know if there would have been the potential for Her Interactive to have released the game at one time and then opened it up to like another online market or online storefront at a later date, and then that could have been confused as the official release date, like something like that?
Yeah, yeah, that could have. So, there's a mad scramble, by Megan to find licensing deals, right? To find distribution deals rather,
Mm-hmm.
and licensing deals. She's also looking for licensing deals too, um, uh, of this game. And again, we were confronted with a whole issue that retail didn't really want to touch it, right?
Right.
It's the same old story that we had with Mackenzie and Company and Vampire Diaries is sort of like, girls 10 and up don't come into these retail areas and buy games.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't want to they didn't want to like distribute them for us. So we were focusing on like mom and pop kind of stores, independent video stores. I don't know if we had started the relationship with Amazon at that time, but very soon we did start a relationship with Amazon since they were selling the Nancy Drew books. We said, hey, if someone's looking to buy a Nancy Drew book, they can see that they can actually play these books as well
Right, of course.
on their computers. And that was an integral relationship for the overall success of the series. Um, but yeah, I don't remember like an actual time where we said like it's out in the stores. I think because we were just scrambling to get really these discs out
Mm-hmm.
to anybody. But I do know that we did release before Thanksgiving. That was really important, is that we got in before the big um, holiday shopping season,
Right.
beginning Friday following Thanksgiving, and we did make that date.
Excellent. Yeah.
And then in subsequent, and then once we were able to then secure deals with the retailers like Walmart and Best Buy and Target, then we had to get Gold Master by at least August, just
Right.
because of the whole process, the calendar leading up to the shopping season
Mm-hmm.
needed that ramp up time to get into the stores.
Yeah, for sure. So, after you guys launched, you said there wasn't, to your memory, much of a launch party, if at all. How did the team feel after the game came out? Were they like, "Thank God that's done," or were they like, let's see what happens," or "Let's just get started on the next one"? Or did you even know at that time if there was going to be a next one?
Yeah, so we did know that there was going to be a next one.
Yeah.
The company had committed to that, and I think our focus was really on, like, let's make Stay Tuned for Danger.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to have a fast turnaround. The company had this idea of creating a series, and also like it was then going to be our game, right?
Right.
Like Seekers Who Kill, we kind of inherited. Um, I think Laura Henyon, probably, yeah, Laura Henyon wasn't even the original kind of person on this game. So this was our game where, we could own it from day one.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, and I remember in the fall we were already starting on Stay Tuned for Danger.
You were okay.
We were, yeah, yeah. So we were having discussions about that. And I think what we really wanted was kind of like retribution or to kind of to really shine with not only with establishing the foundation of Seekers Can Kill, but also with all the learnings that we had building out this game. And we were really hungry to make this game our own.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was more of the mood. There wasn't really this like sense of celebration that I remember. It just felt sort of like, the end of school, the final exam kind
Right.
of deal where you're kind of relieved
Yeah.
actually with releasing this game. Um, and I think, and I don't remember like release party for Stage for Danger either. Um, or I I mean, I remember like celebrations. We would do like celebrations. So like
Mm.
with Message in a Haunted Mansion, we went to Manresa Castle up in Port
Right.
Townsend.
Yeah.
The Secrets, Stay Tuned or for Shadow Ranch. Maybe we went to some ranch
Yeah.
and like in Washington. We went, yeah. So we do these kind of like celebrations, and those are the things I do remember. I think for Stay Tuned for Danger, like we went out for lunch because I remember Brian was there.
Mm.
It was like at the top floor of the Hilton or something like
Oh wow. Nice.
that. And we got like little plaques. So we did,
Sweet.
we did have like momentous kind of occasions, but I think we were just really tired.
Yeah.
Really, really just we're itching to like get into the next game. I remember I think it was final scene, where essentially it was just me like assembling everything and
Mm.
and going through all of the bug reports and essentially like what I was doing was like trying to polish everything.
Yeah.
And I just would hold myself up in the office in Bellevue. And I remember for final scene or one of them, I finished on Halloween, and Max was there at the time, and Max was like this was really like Halloween. There was like this elaborate party. He's like,
Yeah.
come join us. I was like, I'm going to bed. I've been up 32 hours. But then
Oh my
I
word.
I tried to go to bed and I couldn't, if you stay up really late, you get to this point where like, I can't go to sleep. I can't go to
Yeah,
sleep.
exactly. You're
It
past the
was
point of
really
being
into
tired.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, I don't know, I get in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna go geocaching. And so I went by SeaTac in this park to go geocaching, and I started like hearing weird sounds in the brush, and I
Yeah.
was like, I don't think I should be doing this.
Oh my
This is
word.
really dangerous. Um, I think I found
Wow.
the cache, but it was so I think yeah, like just at least for production at the end, it was a trial. It was
Yeah.
hard to get to that very end, to call it Gold Master when all the bugs had been finished, when you say this is it, it's cake now. And let's go to sleep.
Hmm.
We're tired.
So because you guys had kind of viewed Nancy Drew as your next series, and you guys just like that was your. Did you feel that Secrets and Kill was like like the full new foundation for saying this is her interactive, this is who we are. Vampire Diaries and Mackenzie and Co. is part of our history, but we're not like that's just kind of in the past, and we're looking in this new direction. Is that? Do you know if that was kind of a viewpoint, or was that even?
No, 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 and again, like we recognize it's established foundation,
Yeah.
and it felt like we really didn't get into our game until Message in a Haunted Mansion.
Right.
Um, and it feels like for us, like Message in a Haunted Mansion kind of established the true foundation in terms of the art and
Mm.
design and what our intent was for these games, the definition of the character.
Yeah.
Um, and then, Treasure in the Royal Tower really kind of, I think, uh, helped promote that. And then Max came in with Final Scene,
Yeah.
and then we got silly jokey Nancy Drew, which was important, which was good. Like there always was this like kind of weird self-deprecation, a lot of fun in Nancy Drew, and I think Max kind of recognized that, and really exploded upon it with Final Scene,
Hmm.
um, and and I think with each successive right game, we started like establishing conventions or mechanisms or motifs or themes, things like that, more personality to the games that we kind of continued. And a lot of times, whoever was kind of like leading or was dominant in the design, their voice really came through in these games, like the jokey kind of Max stuff, me with the creepy things,
Yeah.
Kathy with her puzzles.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So and then so going from or leading from the first game into Stay Tuned for Danger, how valuable to the team was fan feedback, whether it's just like the general fan or the advisory panel, in shaping the experience of the game for the player?
Yeah, so we all knew, right, that this was not a game for us.
Right.
And I remember like interviewing people, and people were really excited to start in the game company, but you really have to emphasize like it's not your game. It's really a game for this market.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think. So I remember for Vampire Diaries, we brought in girls
Okay.
to look at the games, and that was run by like the marketing department. And then there was also for Vampire Diaries. And again, I would just kind of witness this
Right. Yeah.
from my office. And then for Seekers and Kill, Megan took reins of that, and she, I think, yeah, an advisory panel had been established with Seekers and Kill, these local girls who would would play the game and give us feedback. But it was done after we had completed the game. And so what I
Okay.
really
Yeah.
wanted to do was like understand, get a feel for and a pulse on the girls earlier. And so I worked with Megan to start bringing in the advisory panel earlier, with like concept art,
Right.
and stuff like that. And I think Laura was also instrumental too to get that feedback, right? She's coming from a design background. She
Right.
really
Yeah.
wanted to have that access to her user base early on, rather than ipso facto after we had built that out. And then, as like we established our processes and procedures, then we started integrating the ad panel throughout its different milestones like M1 and M2,
Right.
final script and things like that. And then I started doing the beta testing as well, because people wanted to like try out the games.
Right.
And we had that registration card database that we would use to
Yes.
solicit the beta testing.
Yeah.
And that was really important information. I think with Ghost Dogs, I implemented analytics engine, so we would ask people to send their saved games, because then we can see like what they had done in terms of their playthrough too.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So again, it's I think the root was advisory panel. Just I think half of the function of an advisory panel is also a marketing thing, so we could get blurbs from the kids and pictures of the kids.
Hmm.
But then, we started integrating more and more their feedback throughout the development cycle and started to use beta testing and our analytics engine to get greater insights into play patterns.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So they definitely became more heavily involved as the series went on then over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also the message boards too was a
Oh, of
great,
course.
great source of inspiration
Yeah.
and ideas. We did get letters and emails after we released Seek and Kill, and two that I remember was one from a woman whose I think sister had been murdered,
Mm.
and said, just that it that murder shouldn't be a source of entertainment,
Right.
and the team agreed. And I
Fair
think
enough. Yeah.
for the longest time we did not include a murder in the games, and that was also kind of true to the Yellowback series too.
Yeah.
And then another one said, I'm 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 deaf, and I want to play these games, but a lot of times it's hard for me to understand what's going on. So we
Interesting.
started introducing closed captioning, um, and I remember like trying to figure out like who do I need to talk to get to be able to use the closed captioning insignia.
Yeah.
I remember just like calling a whole bunch of people, and eventually found out like anyone can put CC on their
Oh, really?
caption.
Okay.
There's no
Interesting.
at that time there's no regulatory
Yeah.
uh, body that oversaw that.
Interesting.
But I remember Laura and I hashing out to come up with what's our kind of standard operating procedures, what's our what things should be closed captions and what should not, and then
Right.
how should it be decorated.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, and again, and I know like with today's game industry, that's a very important thing is making games is the accessibility settings for so many games,
Mhm.
and whether it's for people that have a colorblind, because that's a whole stage of a whole set of things, and then obviously closed captioning and even just like physical. I've seen like Xbox has come up with a controller that it's got like two buttons, but it's programmed so you can do everything you need to do with that console and it's or interface, I guess. And it's really interesting how that has so strongly evolved with video games. And the one I know that I think of is with I think it was Destiny, the first one by Bungie. When it came out, there was like 5 different colorblind options, and just to completely change everything for whatever kind of colorblindness. I'm going to be trying to be careful here. I don't know how sensitive of a subject that is, but
Mhm.
yeah, they were really conscious of that, and
Good.
yeah, it's a great little bit of feedback to get on your game for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and there was also later on we learned there were people who were mobility challenged as well.
Right.
And so one thing that we tried to do was put in like some sort of out of like some like an arcade game or something that needed greater manual dexterity or
Hmm.
speed. Um, but I don't know if we ever like formalized that or not.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it feels more like a game by game kind of thing, because I know like with games like the Haunted Carousel where you've got the little arcade games in there like Barnacle Blast, that one, yeah, you need to be a little faster there, but
And that's where we actually put the out in. I think there's some sort of way that you can get out of it. I forget how, but
interesting.
we ended up putting in some sort of mechanism to get out of it. It may have just actually been put in for like technical support reasons too, in case people are like, I can't get through this puzzle, and then we
Yeah.
would tell them like what the secret was. But I think it was like click on the upper right hand corner while the intro is playing or something like
Right. Yeah. Well, I know that's a little thing that is included with like opening cutscenes. You could click the top left corner of the
that.
opening
Right.
letter, and it would just bring you right into the game or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the origin of that was from demos and
Okay, that's
marketing.
what I figured.
So,
Yeah.
when we would be, when Meg and I would be in E3, like whispering people like, I got a game to show you.
Yeah.
Come on down this hallway because we didn't have like the budget for in the early days for like a booth or anything.
Right.
Just like running around with a laptop, code.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so funny. That's so funny. Looking
we were
back,
scrappy.
yeah, exactly, right? No, looking back, because it's been 25 years, how do you feel about the game now? Like, do you feel that it was a success, or that it was successful to Her Interactive's vision, or do you feel like even it just needed so much more reworking? Because you guys did the remaster as well, which gave you the opportunity to upgrade a few things.
Yeah, I let's see. So I think it was a success in terms of like establish the foundation,
Yeah,
right, of these games. It got our name out. It gave the ability for the team to cut their teeth on something, to then really inspire us to do even better with subsequent games. Um, um, but in terms of, I don't think it hit its mark financially of what the company wanted.
right.
I think overall, the company was disappointed with the showing. But it grew, it had its legs. And it added to our repertoire, our catalog, so it was
Right.
able to sell. I know from a fan point of view, you know, it's not in the top 10 or 15 or
Not quite. Yeah.
yeah. Well, um, but it's seminal, right? It's foundational. It's what started us out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think there's kind of like mixed feelings. Like in some ways it was a success, in some ways it was not.
Yeah.
Um, and it was neat with a remastered was that I had the ability to kind of like revisit things that really bothered me,
Yeah.
like the bulletin board messages,
Of
sort of like who's
course.
doing this. Like we don't really know much about like you know um, Jake and who he was.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a name
Oh,
that
and
people.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then yeah. So there's just like it felt like with Seekers and Kill, there's just like a whole bunch of like open questions that I wanted to kind of like shore up and
Yeah.
tie up. So yeah, so I guess that's my answer is like yes, it was a success in some ways, and in some ways it was not a success.
Yeah. Fair enough. And then I've got one final question before we dive into the viewer questions. How did working on this game change your view of the game industry and working in a team to develop a game from the point of view of project manager and eventually into executive producer?
It made me, appreciate and understand all that's involved in making the game, right? Like when you're playing the game, you don't really see the sausage making or
Mm-hmm.
any kind of creative work,
Yeah.
anything from like a film to stage production, to a book. So it really made me appreciate like everything that's involved with with creating uh, interactive interactive entertainment. It also gave me a good appreciation of just like the intricacies with a non right with a non-linear game,
Right.
um, with all the logic, like how easily you can get caught up in that and break something profoundly.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing that it helped me understand was just like all of the technical intricacies of making a game, right? With like film and writing, it was pretty well established, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to use the technology to make these things. With games, like we were still learning, like we
Yeah.
were still winging it. There there wasn't anything. There wasn't any of these kind of like standards or protocols or best methods or books even lectures, pundits, gurus, YouTube
Right.
videos, how to make a game. Like there's none of that. It
Yeah.
was all making it up as we were going and by scratch, and what I relied on was my background in story, my background in literature, my interest in film, and that's what I really relied on heavily to figure out how to make a compelling story, narrative, script, design.
For sure. That's excellent. That's really great. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've. I'm not gonna say I've made any games myself. I've tried, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. But it does give you that whole perspective of everything for sure. We got a few fan questions before we wrap up the show here. The first one comes from Amy C, and I think this is a great question. I'm not sure if you're going to have the knowledge to answer this one, but her question is, was Mitch going to be a character that we could have talked to?
I don't know. I would imagine not,
Hmm.
because of like the budget constraints for animation.
Excellent. And that's kind of funny, actually, because I think it was you that voiced Mitch Dillon in the remaster when I think Nancy gets a call from Mitch saying, "You better stop your nosing or it's going to get bent way out of shape," or something like that. And
Yeah,
you just have this whole little phone call there. But
yeah,
uh,
yeah. That was me.
yeah, so technically we got to talk to you, or talk to Mitch, but just not till 10 years later or 12 years later.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I didn't like. I never liked Mitch. I mean, not only because he like killed people, but it's like, who's this guy? Like, he just comes out of nowhere. Like,
yeah,
it
I
just
know.
felt like, yeah, rug being pulled out from underneath you. And I remember one of the early feedback we got from the advisory panel is like, no red herrings. Like, don't put something in that's not going to go anywhere.
Hmm.
And so we started more crafting. Yeah. And I don't know if that was like inspired by Mitch. Like, just don't throw this guy in at the end. It's gotta be one of the people that we're talking to.
Well, exactly, yeah, and I'm glad that kind of changed as the series went on because yeah, that's it was weird to just have this guy just show up and all of a sudden he's the guy that killed Jake. Yeah, it was really strange, really strange.
Although for Venice, I guess we kind of maybe
Well,
because
but
the Phantom.
yeah, the Phantom was more of a red herring, I guess. But at the same
Yeah,
time, I feel like that worked with the story that was being told of like there is a Phantom that's running around. You're brought in to investigate that, and the Phantom is just a pawn in the grand
right.
game. So I felt
The
it worked.
MacGuffin. The
Yeah,
MacGuffin.
exactly. Yeah, no, I felt it worked well. This next question, the person did not give a name for, or the next two questions, they did not give a name for who asked it. The name they provided was Robert Riedl is a god. So that tells you how much of a fan of you they are. So that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, their first
Don't know what
question.
to do with that.
Yeah. Their first question is was the team frustrated with the technical and or design limitations of the period that it was being designed in?
Yeah, so Tim, so rendering, right? Rendering out the 3D
Hmm.
environments took a long time. I think Tim tells a story about how, you'd have to wake up at 3 a.m., like go to the
Yeah.
computer and push render again.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, the game builds could take hours. So I think that was the big frustration aspect. Another one was just not having a mechanism to easily send the digital assets to the two different offices. That we had to rely on burning on CDs and sending them through FedEx. Um, and then in terms of design wise, um, yeah, like, what would have been cool was to be able to create like a fully immersive 3D environment with high res with
Right.
graphics. And that was always a struggle, a perennial struggle with the board was that the board, wanted us to move in the future, wanted us to go 3D, but then I was like, we can't get the detail. That's the signature of these games
Hmm.
using 3D technology. And we also know that our market doesn't have the latest equipment. And so we really need to make sure that the content we're creating is accessible to them. So yeah, I think those were kind of the limitations that we were working with. And in some respects, we were able to overcome them. And in some respects, we weren't, like with
Right.
3D, until I guess the newer games, which is great because I feel like 3D gives you of a, you know, more of a um, more of a kind of a real feel, or gives you more choice, right? You're
Yeah.
not forced in these shots that we've already established. It's a lot more fluid,
Hmm.
and independent of of the constraints that you have with a flat 2D image.
Definitely. Yeah. Excellent. Their next question is, does he know how beloved the series is and how his creativity spawned a legion of fans who live and breathe Nancy Drew?
No, yeah, I am. I guess what's kind of interesting and overwhelming is the number and the continued, the continued fan base.
Mm,
Like it's interesting. Like you said, you weren't even a thought when these games came out, and it's neat to see that not only have the people who started with these games stuck with it, but there's a new generation
hmm.
that's coming through. And I hope in some respect, right, like you're inspired in some way to like do your art, do your creative
Oh yeah,
thing, find out more about this world that we had allusions to in the games,
totally.
um, and um, and to always figure out who done it.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. No, it's been so much fun to explore all of it, behind the scenes, play the games, all that stuff. It's been a lovely journey, and I know tons of people share the same sentiment.
Yeah, and a source of humor too, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it's I think it's fun to look back and see what we did, and it's like I don't know, it's like it sometimes feels like just watching these walkthroughs feels like Mystery Science 3000, right? Where you have this kind of like running commentary over what you had made,
Yeah.
and people aren't really saying that your baby's ugly, but they're just kind of like pointing out the funny parts,
Oh, for
which
sure. Oh, well, something I would
but,
love to.
but
Yeah, well, it is interesting you point that out too. But yeah, one thing that I would love to do one day, and if this ever even becomes real, I would love to do just a whole proper documentary on the entire series and interview so many people, and just get all this. I mean, ideally I'd be working for Her Interactive, so I could get pull all the stops and just say, all right, we're gonna do this and have fun. But I think it'd be really cool to just do a whole grand look at the series and the development and the ups and downs. I think it'd be really cool. But
yeah, and I feel kind of obligated, to support the fans as well. Like you mentioned when I reached out to you, was that you said like, oh, I'm in Series 25. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
we should probably do something for
it's
this.
a pretty significant milestone that it's yeah, and I really do appreciate you being willing to partake. But it's a pretty fantastic, and I had no plans really to do anything for it at all. But makes it a little. Here we are, 25 years. It's been fantastic. But yeah, well, that's just crazy. Next question comes from my friend Susie, and she asks, "What, if anything, did you anticipate to be the reception of the game, and did you anticipate it to turn into a successful series, or did you think it was going to be a one-off game like the two previous games by Her Interactive? And were you surprised by all the feedback from the players after the release?" And we kind of touched on that, but either way, I'll let you go at that.
Yeah. So in terms of feedback, I don't remember like seeing any kind of like press about Secrets and Kill. Um, and I think we got some fan letters or things like that, but I just feel like with Secrets and Kill, I don't really remember much of a reaction,
Yeah.
either by press or media or anything like that. We were able to like secure, I think, a local TV spot, and that was
Okay.
really fun to see. But yeah, I really don't remember much feedback from Secrets of Hill. It was never intended to be a one-off.
Hmm.
So again, as I said, like there was always this intention that it was going to be a series. Toward there were points where we thought like, I don't know how long this is gonna
Yeah,
last.
of course. Yeah.
Um, I think Final Scene was kind of selected with that sentiment, actually.
Mm, interesting.
Because I think we were kind of thinking like this could be it.
That's really interesting.
It was I think it was with Messenger in a Haunted Mansion though that really the steam started to gather. And we started hitting our Elvis here.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And the final fan question comes from Distant Dimensions, and he asks, "Do you remember anything from the original scope of the project that had to be cut during development?"
Oh, that is a good question. Yeah, I'm just trying to like think about like my discussions with Sherry before she left, and then also what I would see in the whiteboards as they were discussing things. Yeah, there was plans to really to thread out Vandelay
Okay, yeah.
pharmacies, and I think that was slated as a separate environment. But I think because of time constraints or budget constraints, it was not included. So that's why, it has its own area in the map, but nothing really happened.
Right, yeah. Just a little end sequence there. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm curious how that would have tied into the story. How do we got to actually go explore? My guess would probably be something along the lines of discovering or investigating the scene of the break-in and seeing where things were stolen, maybe interviewing another person that worked there or something. But yeah,
Right. Yeah, and that was always like a huge disappointment for me is sort of like, we got this thing on the map.
yeah,
Like, you can see it's closed.
yeah. That's a good Seinfeld Easter egg, regardless. So you can at least have that going, or reference,
That
whatever
was
you want to call
Laura.
it.
Yeah,
That was Laura.
that was Laura. Yeah, that was Laura. Big Seinfeld.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, that about wraps up all the questions from myself and the fans. There were other questions from fans, but they all kind of got answered much earlier
Okay,
on. Um,
cool.
but that's about it. Robert, thank you again so much for being able to go back in time and bring back memories and indulge with the fans. Because I know I'm super thrilled to hear all this stuff. I love all of it. Um, but I really do appreciate you taking your time to come on the show and share your memories and all your stories. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and thank you, Hugh, for keeping the light on and being like my go-to archivist whenever
Yeah.
I wonder like what did we do then? What year was this? What are the
Yeah.
names of the characters? Like, it's just kind of alert to me, so I appreciate that and giving me a platform to speak to the fans and of course the fans themselves. Like thank you so much. Like it really truly is an honor to have been able to like make stuff for you. Um, and Yeah, I never would have thought in a million years, like 25 years later, we'd still be talking about this stuff. But thanks for giving me a chance to like go down memory lane and like remember that strange time of 1998.
Yeah.
When I was 4 years old. I'm doing the math. That's prodigy. I
Yeah, wow. Just like the most talented child in the world.
think. Yes, that was me.
That's amazing.
But yes, yeah, thank you again and happy birthday, Secret Skin Kill, and I'll
Cheers to
see you in
that.
another 25 years.
Yeah, we'll revisit it for the 50-year anniversary. That's a terrifying thought because I'll be like 48 then. So we'll oh my
Oh,
goodness. We'll take that one in a slower pace, I think. But yeah, thanks again, Robert. And for those of you that are watching, I'm thinking I might put this up as like an audio format as well for those that want to just listen to it instead of watching if they're at work or studying or want to go on a road trip and listen to this show. I think I'll do that. So if you're listening, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. And if you're watching, I'm sure there'll be more visual things to look at than our lovely faces. But either way, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day.